Hello, welcome to our interview with David de Santo from GitLab. I'm Friederike and I'm joined from Carsten, and we are talking about GitLab and security. But please introduce yourself, your position, and GitLab.
Absolutely. So my name is David de Santo. I'm Director of Product for our Secure and Defend stages at GitLab. For GitLab, those are our two security-focused areas of our portfolio. I oversee our product team that's focused on security and how do we drive DevSecOps best practices. I'm very excited to talk to you today about security. I've been with GitLab almost a year now. Time has flown by, but in that year, we've done a lot of really great things to help developers write more secure code and enable ops teams to be able to properly secure their cloud native environment.
Please tell us more about your DevSecOps approach.
Absolutely. So there's two halves to that story. The first half is secure. Secure is focused on application security testing. So this is testing the code for security vulnerabilities. And that includes everything from static analysis, where we're accessing the repository and scanning the code for things like a SQL injection or a password leaking, to dynamic analysis, where we're testing the app as it runs. And that includes doing things like web vulnerability scans of the application. That can be done both in your development or in the operations side. So we can actually scan any web application you point us at. And then that kind of wraps up with our software composition analysis, where we're doing things like checking dependencies, making sure you're building your containers securely, as well as enforcing licenses. So if you're an organization who's adopting open source, which is obviously a very big trend over the last several years, that you're only accepting licenses that meet your requirements. Say you only allow like MIT or Apache, and you want to avoid things like AGPL, like you can set that as a policy and then the code can't be merged with that licensing. The latest thing we added on the secure side, which we're very excited about, and I'm sure we'll get to talk about a little bit today, is recent acquisitions. We acquired two security companies back in June, so about 2 months ago, and they're focused on fuzz testing. So that's taking the application and injecting unknown and malformed payloads to make sure it's can handle them properly and not get into a bad state that could potentially be exploited. And so last month we launched our coverage guided fuzzing. That's where the fuzzer is scanning the source code and is making little micro instances to test. So that way you can find things like memory errors and things that could cause you to have a problem. The other company focused on testing against the live application, and that goes live with our next release. And we're focusing on fuzzing REST APIs. And so that's really the secure side. It's all pulled together by our vulnerability management, where you can see your security findings in your development workflow. So right on our merge request view, you can see your security findings from your last commit. We also have security dashboards at the project group level and instance level, so you can manage your risk, either again on that individual project or as an entire company. So we're very excited about that part of our offering as well. It's allowing the dev and the ops and the tech teams work together, which is part of the GitLab mission, is that everybody can contribute and everybody can collaborate. So that's the one half. The other side is our defend, and that's focused on operational security. That's a lot newer for us. It's only about maybe half a year old at this point. We're focused on running in cloud native environments. So securing web applications with our web application firewall, and preventing people from running attacks against your containers with our container network security and our container host security offerings. So that was a lot, but I want to make sure I answered your question and gave you a sense as to what we're doing and what we're excited about. So I apologize if that was a lot more than you were hoping for.
Oh, fine. Thank you.
I can talk all day about our stuff. I'm very excited about it, if you can't tell.
It's a little bit obvious, but it's awesome to see that. And frankly, we are actually blessed having somebody in our video who is talking that much, and it's not being us. If you look back a little bit in history of GitLab and automated tools in that regard, security wasn't always at the very core, at the very center, right? Can you elaborate a little bit into why and how that evolved into what is there today? And you mentioned recent acquisitions. There is a strategy behind it. Can you elaborate as well a little bit into the strategy? Because to me, that is very, very exciting and interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. Security started for GitLab about 2 years ago. GitLab acquired a company named Gymnasium, which is focused on dependency checking for Ruby and Rails. And that was kind of the beginnings of saying, like, how can we help developers write better code and write more secure code? And over the time, there was definitely a movement to begin to shift security left, which is getting security as close to the developer as possible. And with that, we began to branch out into other areas such as that stack analysis. Over the last year, it's become one of our 3 pillars of GitLab to heavily invest in. So, and to kind of give you a sense, our first is our enterprise readiness, being able to help people be cloud native and expand. The other one was continue to grow our core. As you just mentioned, Carson, like that was our CI, our CD, and our SCM. But the third part of that was security. We wanted to bring world-class security into DevSecOps. And so our focus has been taking that application security testing definition and being able to address each part of that for our users. And by extension, the community, because we're also making a lot of our security also available in our free tier. So you don't have to be a paid customer to begin getting the benefits of writing more secure code. So that's kind of been our focus. We want to be able to help people test, understand the findings, and make it as easy and adoptable as possible.
That sounds very, very, very interesting to me. When I look at GitLab's website, I find a section about security directions. And you bring in a lot of very, very interesting strategies. You're speaking about 3-year strategy and so on and so forth. And I feel like there's a bigger picture to that. There is a bigger story behind that and a bigger vision than looking forward. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because what I see is that the security aspect is increasingly important. And what I realize, what I want to bring onto the table is basically GitLab's stance on that. Because to me, that topic can't be underestimated at all. So can you elaborate a little bit into that, into the strategy? You have that 3-year strategy, you have that left and right approach there.
Absolutely.
That would be awesome if we could hear a little bit about that. Yeah,
absolutely. And for everyone who's watching our conversation here, Carson's referring to this, which is our direction page. The one thing that makes GitLab very unique, and one of the reasons why I was excited to come to GitLab, is we're an open core company, which means our strategy, our direction, details of our roadmap, that's all public. And that includes what Carson's referencing here, which is getting to like, what are our 3-year themes? What are we trying to drive towards? And so to answer that question, yeah, so we're kind of looking at the entire security experience and how can we help people be more secure? And so those themes include things like everybody can contribute. Security is successful if everybody's a part of that story. So it shouldn't just be on the security teams to be secure. It shouldn't be on the ops teams to deploy securely. It shouldn't just be on the developers to write secure code. If everybody's working together, companies are going to be way more secure. And so our goal is to make that possible as part of our platform. And we're seeing that success today with a lot of our recent customers who've come to us to try to make a cloud native transformation in their company and do it securely. The other theme you just touched on, which I can't stress enough, is that shift left. And it's kind of a play on the words on that strategy page, because we're talking about being more left than the shift left mentality. And really what that means is, you'll hear a lot of security companies talk about how they are helping people shift left. But what they're saying is like, well, we're taking our existing security tool and we're asking the developer to run it now. And developers are very talented. They can be very knowledgeable, but they're not security experts. And when we talk to them, they don't want to write bad code. They want to write very secure code, and they just need help understanding that. And so that's what we mean by shifting more left. We want to be able to take the security tools that we have, let them be part of that developer workflow, but make it so they can understand it and know what they need to do. And a great example of that is that we're going down to even identifying the line of code that's causing the problem for them. So like, it's easy to say, hey, there's a password in your file. It's a lot harder to say, hey, your application crashed and here's why. And so that's our focus, is being able to give the developer the ability to look at that result and know what to go fix, including one of my favorite features we launched recently is auto remediation, where they can actually just click a button and we will actually fix the security problem for them automatically. So that's taking our knowledge and our expertise and helping them be secure. But probably the last one that's worth highlighting is the last one that Carson, you mentioned, which is our taking a plan that shift right. We're also talking about shifting, or I'm sorry, we talked about shifting left, but now shifting right. And that's kind of the traditional security story about protecting operations. But again, going back to that first thing where we feel that the security team and the operations team, the dev team need to work together. We want to take the intelligence we're learning in development and help the operations team be more secure. And a great example of that is our web vulnerability scanning. We're working to connect the results from that web scan to be able to auto update your policies in your Kubernetes cluster. So if we find a vulnerability in the application, we can tell you have it in production and we can automatically remediate it for you. And that allows those teams working together more collaboratively as opposed to working as siloed. But if you're to take something away from our 3-year intent on the security side, it's to make everything be a proactive, data-driven decision and take away that uncertainty of like, what should I do next? And whether that's our work on applying machine learning to the results, whether it's us connecting the parts of that workflow together and drive collaboration, our goal is to make sure people can truly be more secure. So that's what you're seeing on that direction page. And I'll let everyone know too, like, it's very easy to find. If you just Google GitLab secure direction, it comes up. You can also do the same thing on our defend direction, where we're talking about that operational security. And we also have a dedicated security direction page. It's not just talking about just secure, just defend, but how it all fits together. So I'm glad you asked that question. We're very proud of how transparent we are and very passionate about making sure people can be secure.
You mentioned automated security. Please tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you offering there?
Yeah, so we want to make sure things aren't manually driven. In today's world, especially when you think of topics like KubeCon, there's no such thing as staging anymore. There's no such thing as, you know, this dedicated team that has to figure these things out. It has to be done automatically because things are changing so quickly. And so on that automated front, with just a single click in our UI, you can get all of your security scanning up and running. We have an auto DevOps platform, which I'm sure other GitLabbers who've been talking on these sort of things have probably mentioned, but a single click deploys out the base configurations we recommend based off what we know of your source code, and you can get scanning with your next pipeline run. And then likewise, we're also automating the deployment of the security components in Kubernetes as well. And so whether you're using auto DevOps or you're just looking at our managed apps page where you can say deploy, that entire process of getting that environment up and running is done automatically for you. And we want to do it in a way that is proactive for you, but also takes away some of the concern and risk. So we also deploy in a detect only mode. So we're not immediately blocking malicious traffic, but you're aware it's there, and then you can just easily click it on if you get to that level of comfort. The one thing I can't stress enough though on the automation part is that auto remediation I just mentioned, of auto remediating vulnerabilities. Today it's focused on the developer side of the story, but over the next year we're working on making it part of the entire story. So if you were just to take a step back and think of this, where we're going is we want to be able to allow a developer to write code, and at the end of the day, do their commit, their pipelines can calc, they're going to go home, and overnight be able to identify these vulnerabilities, remediate them for them automatically, which we can do today, but then identify whether that vulnerability exists in production, and then essentially auto heal that production environment and just auto redeploy a new policy. So that's what we're working on right now to take what we're already doing automated wise and making it fast and automatically deployed.
That sounds and that feels like very, very bold strategy, a very, very bold approach. Isn't that changing the way GitLab internally actually is proceeding on with things as well? So it will definitely have some sort of internal impact as well on the way you are writing your software, on the way you are looking at things, perhaps even on the acquisitions that you are doing and planning. Can you elaborate a little bit on that as well? Because I feel like to our viewers, that is very interesting because insights from a company is always the best thing.
Yeah, so I can tell you that at GitLab, we love dogfooding our own product. So, you know, if we don't like it, how can we expect you to like it? And so the security components I've been talking about are things our team already uses today. You mentioned the acquisitions and how those decisions get made. And I can tell you that like the engineering team and our security team were thrilled when they learned we were acquiring Peach Tech and Fuzzit because they were recognized products that they enjoyed using. But now we're taking those and making those part of that developer workflow we have in our product. As for our future direction and how that kind of changes how engineering works, I can say that I spend a lot of time talking to my engineering counterparts to make sure we're building something they need, as well as we're setting goals that we believe are achievable. But our CEO, Sid, loves the thing I just mentioned, the auto healing component, because GitLab, we publish our code continually. So if you're using our SaaS offering, it's updated at least once a week, if not multiple times a week. And we want to be able to be very reactive because we don't want to be in a situation where we make a code change and then we say to you, hey, we've lowered our security. We apologize. We'll fix it in a month. Like that's not how the world works today, right? And so we want to be able to deploy, secure, validate as quickly as possible. And to your point, Carson, like we're not the only company who's now facing this. Like my former employer, prior to coming to GitLab, our customers, they're coming to us and saying our cycle times aren't 3 months anymore. They're once a week or once a day. And security has to be moldable and adjustable to meet that new demand. You can no longer wait to the end of a cycle to run a security scan and see whether or not you should release. You have to do that early and do that often. And so that's how it's morphing our direction as a product, but also as a company, we've made security the forefront of our plans.
Again, you gave me another keyword. I promise we won't be talking for like 2 hours. I promise.
I will talk to you as long as you want to talk to. I love what we're doing.
Yeah, but we need to have the interests of the viewers in mind as well. But you mentioned things are speeding up even more and continuously speeding up. Turnaround times of hours instead of days, weeks, months for the new version. And the new version is basically going to be deployed without, let me put it that way, manual audits, whatever. It's continuously going on. I mean, that has always been at the core of what GitLab is doing, enabling that kind of continuous deployment, supporting that. When I look then again on what you are doing, like you mentioned that fuzz testing, container security stuff, I feel like those aspects are becoming more and more important because again, it has to be done automatically. It needs to be applied pretty much every time. Can you elaborate into that as well a little bit, specifically in regard to the fuzz testing aspect as well as the container security aspects? Because I feel like given now is KubeCon, that is very, very important to many of those who are watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you talk about specifically the two areas you just talked about and the deployment, you're right. Like we're expecting our developers, our ops teams, our security teams to do more than they can do manually. And if you can't automate it, you're going to end up finding something late and you could be compromised, could be breached or whatever the case is. And so on our container security, it's very much focused on, are you building a secure container? And that is part of the CI process where we can help you identify, hey, you're using an old package that is vulnerable. We can do it on the production side where we're continually scanning the container to make sure it hasn't been compromised. And the best example I can give of that is it's one thing to know an attack has been run. It's another thing to know how to react to it. And what we've been focusing on, and we launched, I would say it was 2 months ago, was in our 13.2 release, was our ability to identify what the processes are that are running inside your container and list them based off our knowledge of your container, and then block new things that are spinning up. Because there was this interesting research that was released a couple weeks ago talking about the time to compromise, and that like password compromising, like if you leak that into your repository, it's an average of 5 minutes till an attacker can grab it and use it. So if you have that as a reality and now somebody can get into your container, how do you know that they got in there and they've launched their own thing that's trying to do something? And to your comment, like, that's why we're focusing on that. It's like, you need to know that that container is running and it's secure and it's not in a state that it could be compromised. Now you touched on the fuzz testing. That's actually very interesting too, because fuzz testing is something that used to be like a dark art that only like security hackers and researchers knew how to do. And that was not enabling everybody to be more secure. And so our focus has been, again, on that ease of use. We want everybody to be involved. And we're already seeing great responses from that. Not directly KubeCon related, but one of our customers just wrote a blog on our website talking about how they had vulnerabilities in their app that had been there for years that they didn't find with their traditional testing, but with fuzz testing, they were able to find them. And so we want to enable that. To bring it back to KubeCon, APIs are a huge part of automatic deployment. You want to know that you've built a secure RESTful API, and that's why we made that acquisition of Peach and why we're integrating that in. And like I said, I'm excited that our release that comes out at the end of this week includes that REST API fuzzing. It's going to allow people to really, truly understand their API security and their position within that environment.
So the word that comes into my mind when thinking of that is, besides security, trustworthiness, right? We are talking about
absolutely.
making our deployments and perhaps our infrastructures more trustworthy from the very beginning. So that is a very, very interesting aspect, which is, from my perspective, way too often overseen and overlooked. That is an interesting one. I have one more question in that regard. You mentioned that you roll out those aspects not only into the highest commercial tiers, but also into the open source versions, a little bit slimmed down, but they are there. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Why did you do that? I mean, companies are paying a lot of money for having more security and more trust in what they do. So can you elaborate into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our other 3-year themes, one of the ones that I just didn't touch on, is our open source stewardship and helping everybody secure themselves. And you're correct. So when we launched our security offering, we put it in our high-end tier, our ultimate or gold tier. And that's because that's where those decisions are being made. Executives are saying, I need to be more secure. However, we do want to make sure everybody can feel secure and know that they're making the right, secure coding practices. And so we've begun to bring our scanners from our ultimate tier down to our free tier, which is called Core if you're hosting yourself, or free if you're using GitLab.com, because we want you to be able to get into good coding practices that'll help you be more secure. And that's one of the core values of GitLab as a company, is our open source stewardship. GitLab started as an open source project, and we want to continue to support the open source community. So today, with our release this week, all of our SAST scanners, the scanners that read your source code and can identify vulnerabilities, are all available for free. Also, our acquisitions, we moved our acquisitions of the engines from Fuzzit also into our free tier as well. And that's coming out with this release as well. So you don't get that ultimate experience, Carson, that you would expect in a product you're paying a lot of money for. But if you're a open source project, or you are a small business like trying to figure out how do you do security and how do you get into the cloud, it's the right tools for you, and they're just available for you to use. And so, yeah, it's as simple as just pressing that auto DevOps button again I talked about, or looking in our documentation, we've got really great documentation on how to get our features up and running.
David, I'm stopping here because again, that conversation could last for hours now. Thank you for those very, very in-depth informations. I feel like I'm a developer by heart and from my origin, so I feel very, very good covered there. And I will definitely advise our customers to use GitLab products because that is important.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we're here to help everybody. So yeah, please feel free, and we will definitely help you be more secure. And
thank you for your time. Thank you for joining our
absolutely.
interview. It was a great pleasure to meet you.
It was great meeting you as well.
Thank you so much.
Yep, have a great day.